Hey, what's going on? So, today I want to talk with you about how making drastic changes and relaunches, updates to your website or web app um, need to be thought of carefully from the user's perspective. And to start this off, I want to tell you a story about how eBay decided to change their background color from a yellow tint, which was like a 90s style thing, to just a white background color. And they were getting feedback from the users that they didn't like the yellow background color. It was kind of dated, and they're like, let's update this. So they made the switch, and overnight, the background color went from yellow to white. And immediately, they started getting emails and their user feedback saying they hate it. Where's the yellow background? We really liked white, or we really liked yellow. Why the hell are you doing a white background? And they even saw a decline in sales from this simple color change. So they put it back to yellow, and they went back and I can't imagine how long they thought about this to come up with this idea, but just imagining very highly paid people in a room talking about how they're going to get the background color from yellow to white, and they came up with this idea of every day they're going to take the background color closer and closer to white, just a shade from yellow tint to lighter, lighter, lighter. And over the span of a couple of months, they went from yellow to white, and the users, they were able to get used to this change gradually over time, and it worked for them. And recently, eBay changed how their whole sign-up page works, or not the sign-up page, how you list the product to sell. The whole thing was a forms update, and the way, so this forms, like, you'd imagine eBay, a lot of if people are not comfortable adding products to eBay and they see a dramatic loss in amount of products on eBay, that's going to cost them so much money. Because if you just think about the massive amount of users, they make money every time that a product is sold. So if you're cutting the amount of products that are being put on eBay by, say, 15%, 10%, and they could be losing millions of dollars. So it's a risk, and they thought about it a lot. And how they started doing it was they had these new forms, and the user would go to add a product, and it would show the new forms. But there would be a message that said, hey, do you want to keep these as default, or do you want to go back to the old forms? And that's how they're able to gauge user acceptance and see if, sometimes, can you imagine you do this this acceptance test, you show them the new forms, and you think they are freaking awesome. They're like really efficient. There's amazing flags for validation and all this stuff, and the user gets it, and they're just like, oh my, you see that no one wants to use it. They're constantly going back to the old way. Well, then, instead of trying to force that on your user, I think that's when you got to do the due diligence, figure out why the user didn't like them, make changes, and maybe you run that test 3, 4, 5, 6 times till you get your users to have a good enough acceptance that it's a good rollout. And even so, it's very important for websites to keep that in mind. Users don't like sudden drastic changes, so to always have that in your back mind. But even more so when it comes to web applications, because the more and more I've been doing this, it seems more that like web applications are a way that people get work done, and it affects their daily lives. And if you do not those are the things, if people are used to a workflow, and just every day they wake up, they get their coffee, and then they go to this web app, and they do this workflow over and over and over again, and then immediately you change it all on them. A lot of times people are not going to like that, and you could risk people leaving because they're like, even if it's a much bigger improvement. So I think it's always good to have, especially, I think it's very important for web developers to know this, because we're in the mindset we're building these awesome new features, but we always have to be thinking how can we get this to the user in a way that's not just going to be hugely sudden, to destroy what kind of reputation, what kind of user base, and have them change their workflow without getting used to it. So it's kind of been on my mind recently, as I've been working with more web applications, that people use these things to get, that's part of their lives. So it's really good to make sure that you have a good plan for them, and they don't like drastic changes. So that's all my rantings for today. I think it was kind of fun to talk about. We're going to be doing a lot more web app stuff with Angular, and if you want to hear more, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.